A lot of you are not here today because of your faith in God. Some of you are not even here today because of your faith at all. Some of you are here because you live with someone of faith. Someone that believes in God has influenced you and you're here today. Or maybe you're seeking God in some way. And that's a good thing to do. I'm in favor of that. But I want you to think about maybe some of the difficulties of living with someone that has faith. Even if you do have some faith of your own, it's still different when you're living with someone that also has faith. And what I'm after there are lots of implications when you are in community with someone that has faith in who God is. A lot of implications for your life. Strange implications that we don't think about very often. This morning's situation even includes the pressures of how often you might have sex. Now, wait a minute. He went far afield there. I mean, he's got us walking with someone that has faith in God. And now he's affecting our private relationship in the bedroom? Well, exactly. Because we're going to look at Sarah's life from Sarah's perspective, not Abraham's. Now, in Genesis 11:29, it says, Abram and Nahor took wives. Lots of text on the screen today. But if you have a Bible that has headings, you might like to find that Bible. We're going to travel through some things quickly, look at some of the headings. First mention here, Abram and Nahor took wives for themselves. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai. The name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Iscah. Verse 30, Sarah was barren, and she had no child. Well, I just want to ask you, did you really expect her to have a child yet? They got married the verse ahead. They just now got married. And the verse immediately says that Abram took Sarai as his wife. The next verse says, Sarai is barren and she has no child. Number one, it's redundant. If she's barren, naturally she has no child. Couldn't he just say she had no child? Well, no. Sarai is barren and she has no child. Now, that's not a big deal at that point. But 3 verses later, now, this isn't on your screen. You already know this. God tells Abraham that he's going to have a mighty nation descend from him. Now, wait a minute. Sarah has to say, I don't know how long they've been married. There's a gap in some of our timing. I don't know what her faith journey is. Abram hears God over in Ur of the Chaldees and begins to move toward the land of Canaan. Sarai is living with a man of faith, like some of you today. Now, maybe she has great faith, but it's not witnessed or evidenced yet. She's just having to live with someone that really believes in God. And that's going to begin to bring some stressors pretty soon to her life. They eventually move on down to the land of Canaan. There's Abraham 75 when they finally get there. They just have lived in the land for a while. For 10 years, Sarai has been living with the man who says, God promised me descendants and I'd have a whole nation. Now, all of us guys know what that's going to start to look like and how that's going to start to feel when year after year there is no child. And Sarai, I don't think she knows she's barren and has no child at that point. She's walking that walk of faith with the man of faith that says, God promised we'd have a child. And any of you that have ever been there at any level begin to feel the tension grow in the bedroom. The strain begin to come between two people. and the relationships start to come. What it means to walk in faith in God with this person that believes in God, who promised him that he would have kids. Lots of them. More than you could count. You haven't delivered. It was assumed that it was a female problem, not a male problem. She even assumes it's a female problem, not a male problem. Even in today's world, with all that we know, we assume it's a female problem at first, don't we? Not a male problem. Well, walking by faith in God brings up some strange things. The only reason I keep bringing it up with Sarah is she has to focus on this. It's a part of what it means for her to be the wife of the man who God promised would have kids. Walking by faith. Well, in Genesis chapter 16, Sarai comes to this point. I believe God, so I'll help my best. I'll do my best to help him out. Here's my handmaid. 10 years in, let's read the text. Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. She had an Egyptian maid whose name was Hagar. So Sarai said to Abram, now behold, the Lord has prevented me from bearing children. Wait a minute, I'm walking with this God who told you were going to have descendants, and this God has prevented me from bearing children. So Sarai said to Abram, now behold, Yahweh has prevented me from bearing children. Please go into my maid. Perhaps I will obtain children through her. And Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. Ooh, there's a tough one that comes in there. After Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, Abram's wife, Sarai, took Hagar, the Egyptian, her maid, and gave her to her husband, Abram, as his wife. No surrogacy here. She's not a concubine. Abram takes her as his wife. But remember, it's easy to walk out of faith in God. There's no issues ever come up, right? No issues in the bedroom out of faith. No issues in relationships out of faith. Now, there's some tough issues that start to come. Now, Hagar, when it says is her maid, likely she is her slave, and she is her property, and therefore has claim over her progeny. And so Sarai literally is going to say, okay, I didn't produce, but what I want to do is I'll give Hagar to Abram and I'll have a child that way. I'm not fulfilling my physical roles, so I'll do my best to help God out here. God made a promise to my husband that he'd have descendants, and I'm not producing, so she in good faith. Look at that wonderful phrase. Please go in. Perhaps I will obtain children through her. Maybe that's how God's going to do this. Now, all of us reading the back end of the story, we want to hear Abram say, no, wait a minute, Sarai. God said we were going to have kids. It's not time for that radical outcome. We're not going to go try anything different. We want the man of faith in the household to stand up and be a man of faith. But he says, okay, whatever you say. He's at a loss too. What does it mean to walk by faith in God who made this promise? And Sarai's trying to make it happen, and Abram's trying to make it happen. And you get the tensions and the frustrations of making it happen and all of the situations that come. And finally, Hagar. Well, you know the story. Hagar conceives immediately. Why, Ishmael is right there. So it's not Abraham's problem. Now that's going to change some of the stressors in the home, right? And as soon as Ishmael is born, the dynamic between Hagar and Sarai changes. Now I'm having to live in a household with a man of faith who's been promised descendants where I'm on the outside looking in, though I'm the one that advocated helping God out. We were trying to do our best for God. Some of you are walking by faith today trying to do your best for God. Maybe that's going to work out. You have to learn a lesson this morning. Something else is going on. Well, from chapter 16, you get the circumcision that comes in chapter 17, the sign of circumcision, and you're having Sarai watch Ishmael be circumcised with his dad. Sign of covenant between these males and God. And Sarai's having to live that problem. Her name's changed to Sarah in chapter 17, verse 15. But we find ourselves in chapter 18. I believe God. This is just hilarious. Doesn't God know I'm 90? I mean, at what point, if you're a woman married to a man that's going to have descendants, and he's got that one boy over there that's coming to be a teenager, and you're past the time, the manner of women is how that literally comes out. You're past the manner of women. All you young girls can go ask your mom what that means. Ask someone older if you need to. But she's past where she can have any kids. I mean, the mechanics have stopped. They don't exist. And this happens. Some folks show up to visit your husband. You make them this meal. They said to Abram, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" He said, "There in the tent." He said, "I will surely return to you at this time next year, and behold, Sarah," now she's 90 years old now. Abraham's 100, well, 99. What does it mean to walk by faith in God for so long that the promises can't come true anymore? Well, it's tough. "I will surely return to you at this time next year, and behold, Sarah, your wife, will have a son." And Sarah was listening at the tent door, which was behind. Now, Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in age. Sarah was past childbearing. She laughed to herself, saying, "After I become old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord, being old also?" And the Lord said to Abram, "Why did Sarah laugh, saying, 'Shall I bear a child when I'm old?' Is anything too difficult for the Lord? At the appointed time, I will return to you at this time next year, and Sarah will have a son." Sarah denied it, however, saying, "I did not laugh," for she was afraid. And he said, "No, but you did laugh. I know you, Sarah." Well, what's their journey been like? Sarah must have been hot when she was younger, right? Because they go down to Egypt, and they get to Pharaoh's place, and Abram had prearranged that anywhere they traveled, she was supposed to tell everyone that she was his sister, not his wife. Because after all, God is trying to save Abraham, right? Abraham says, "My life is on the line. If they think that you're my wife, they'll just kill me and take you. So tell everyone you're my sister." A real man of faith. He's sort of, what's going on here? No, he says, "Hey, God promised I was going to have a lot of kids. If I'm dead, I can't have them, so you lie." Right? Wait a minute. What does it mean for me to walk out of faith in who you are? Now, technically, she is his sister, but everyone knows she's his wife. Another lesson. You get a lot of strangeness in Scripture. God says, "No, I'm going to be God to you. I'm going to take care of things for you." In our humanity, we just look God in the face and laugh and say, "You failed on this promise, buddy. It's not happening. Shall I have pleasure when he is old?" Can you imagine what it was like the next 2 or 3 months? 100-year-old guy saying, "One more time for the Gipper. Gotta try," right? Well, wait a minute. I'm already past the point, and you're 99. You're not performing. No, wait a minute. This is going to be our child. Well, that's tough, isn't it? That's tough. I'm getting to that point. Here we are. Well, then Abram begins to deal with Abimelech. We move ourselves to chapter 21. In the middle there is a story about Abram going to Abimelech and Sarah lying again, saying, no, I'm just his sister. And she's still hot at 90 because he takes her into his harem at 90 years old. And God says, whoa, it's not happening this way. Now, he didn't do this down in Egypt, but at this point he says, whoa. He closes every womb in Abimelech's land. No one has access. He closes everything off because something different has changed. Now, Abraham has put the promise of God in jeopardy. The guy had already said, this time next year you're going to have a son. And now they end up with Abimelech, and we find that Sarah is in someone else's harem, and Abram has placed his wife where it's conceivable that someone might conceive in her. And he says, that's not going to happen. God shuts it down. This is about me now, not about you. So I believe God, He makes my heart laugh. This is Isaac, which, by the way, in Hebrew means he laughs or laughter. God says, let's have a little fun here. Let's see what it will look like for old people to raise a child. Let's give them a baby. But it's going to be a miracle baby. But it's not the virgin birth, and it's not even a Holy Spirit conception. It's a 99-year-old man and this 90-year-old woman. They're going to have this baby. Because God made a promise to Abram that he would have this descendant, and it wouldn't be Ishmael. It's going to be Sarah's baby. Oh. I want you to back up for a moment and remember that some of you are walking out of someone else's faith today. You're here because they believe in God. I pray that you'll come to believe in God yourself. But they're having to wrestle with, what does it mean for me to believe in God? And they're struggling with that. And you're helping God out all you can, and you're doing all the things that humans know to help God along. And God says, no, it's my job, not yours. Here's the text. The Lord took note of Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah as he had promised. So Sarah conceived and bore a son to Abraham in his old age at the appointed time of which God had spoken to him. Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore to him. Be sure and read that phrase. Whom Sarah bore to him. Well, this is my son that Sarah bore to me. Called him Isaac. Abraham circumcised his son Isaac on the 8th day as God had commanded. Now, Abram was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh with me. And she said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. The child grew and was weaned. Then Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. Boy, the tension and the stressors finally taken out of the way. Walking with someone of faith is not always easy because of what they believe and you have to deal with. Walking with someone of faith gets to a point where hopefully you begin to have some faith. You begin to trust God. We don't even want to talk about what happens in the next chapter, right? Isaac grows up. I don't remember who I was talking to this week. It was a female. But I said, what do you think Sarah did the day Abraham said, I'm going to take my son over to Mount Moriah and kill him over my dead body? You know, they had some astute point that the text probably allows us to have. Their view was Abraham didn't dare tell her. He just took Isaac and went. That might be it. Do you know what I went through for this child? You're going to take him over to a mountain? Well, they're going to walk by faith. Sometimes God asks us to do hard things that we don't understand. Some of you have experienced this morning's lesson way too emotionally. No way I can comprehend that. No promises that you're going to have that child. I've seen some hearts devastated. I've seen marriages broken up over it. I've seen one woman that was convinced she would go to hell because she could not bear a child. She read what Paul said, and women are saved through childbirth, so she just assumed if she couldn't bear a child, she was going to hell. Literally. That's not what that verse means. We'll talk about it sometime, but it's an emotional thing. It's a difficult thing. How do I walk by faith in a God that doesn't always perform the way I think He should, but doesn't do what I think He ought to do? And then Sarah, she gets to have a baby at 90 years old. At least they have to deal with the difficulty that comes. What do we do in that environment? Ancestry.faith. I'm glad for Abraham. We talk about him all the time, but I guarantee you I am thrilled for Sarah that she is my ancestor of faith, that she blesses us with a walk with a faithful being. And she comes to have faith. Here's what Hebrews 11:11 says. By faith, even Sarah herself received ability to conceive even beyond the proper time of life, since she considered him faithful who had promised. It finally gets down to Sarah. She makes the Hebrews hero list, the heroes of faith. And she is the one who considered him faithful who had promised. God made some promises. He didn't promise we'd all have great marriages. He didn't promise we'd all have good kids. He didn't promise we'd have great parents. He didn't promise we'd have any children. But He's made some great promises to us. And He's promised us eternal life, and He's promised us life in His Son. And I appreciate the work up to communion about that. I want you to take the snapshot of those kids on stage now. I want you to think about the preciousness of the gifts that God gave in the faces of those children. And move our minds toward the future. God is at work in ways beyond our knowing. He's doing things beyond our thought. But that doesn't take away the tension of what it means to walk in faith with a person of faith today. Some of you have that struggle. Oh, it may not be in the bedroom where Sarah and Abraham obviously had to have their stressors. And it may not be in the ways that any of us understand. But you know what it's like to walk with someone of faith. Are you walking because of someone else's faith today? If you are, honestly, yes, that's why I'm here. Because someone else believes in God. I'm glad for that person, and I'm glad for you. Are you still trying to help God do it your way? Most of us would be pretty happy if God just did things the way we think He ought to do them. And the world would be really messed up if God did it that way. God is orchestrating. He knows what's going on. The goal of our ancestry of faith with Sarah is the final one. Have you decided to consider the one who promises to be faithful? God, I throw up my hands. I don't know how we're going to do this. It's impossible. I'm faithful. God, there's no way this is ever going to work out in any way that's helpful. I'm faithful. I'm never going to be good enough to go to heaven, but Jesus is good enough to take you there. I'm never going to be the person in community that I ought to be, but the Spirit is holy enough to make you holy in community where you live. Walk by faith in the faithful one. Consider Him faithful who promises. The song we're about to sing, had it not been the Lord who was on our side. Think about that. Had it not been the Lord who's on our side, we would never arrive at the moments of faith. Maybe you're really struggling with some emotional things. If you need to talk with me or one of the elders about trying to live with someone of faith when you don't have faith, we'd be glad to talk to you. Or maybe you're living with faith and it's causing some real tension. We'd be glad to try to help alleviate some of that tension. God is faithful. Mainly we'd ask that you quit trying to do it your way and begin to trust that God said it. We believe it. He will perform it because the Lord is on our side. Together we stand and sing.